What's the first event you remember about yourself? Maybe your pet? How about Santa Claus or your first kiss? My first memory is when some older kids shot at me with a slingshot, and then I walked around for a week with a huge bruise on my butt. And my saddest memory is when my cat died. I wouldn't mind erasing that story from my memory. But it's worth remembering. Wishes can come true. Today I'll tell stories of extraordinary people. Those who have lost their memories. Those who remember every second of their lives. And even those whose memory holds events that never actually happened. And why does this scene no longer seem like science fiction? So where does our memory reside? Until the 1950s, scientists believed that visual, verbal, and other types of memories were stored in different areas of the brain's cortex. Everything changed after a risky operation performed by neurosurgeon William Scoville. His patient was Henry Molaison. When Henry woke up in the hospital, he didn't remember how he got there, didn't recognize the doctors, and saw an old man in the mirror, even though he was only 27 years old. When I wake up after a party, all swollen and dirty, I also see a completely different person in the mirror. And by the way, not a particularly pleasant one. Before the operation, he suffered from severe epilepsy. To alleviate his condition, Scoville removed both hippocampi, violating the main principle of neurosurgery: never touch symmetrical areas on both sides. The seizures became manageable, but Henry lost the ability to form new memories. He could retain information for no more than 20 seconds. After that, everything was erased. He couldn't remember whether he had eaten breakfast, what had happened to his parents, or who the people around him were. At the same time, his intelligence, an IQ of 1 to 10, sense of humor and logic remained intact. He was able to learn. For example, he mastered playing the piano and solved crosswords, each time perceiving the same one as if it were new. And Henry lived to be 82 years old, always believing he was 27. His case demonstrated the formation of memories associated with the hippocampus, the only area of the brain where new neurons are formed. This is our hard drive. No drive, no data. Henry became the most studied patient in the history of medicine. Doctors surrounded him until the end of his life, and after his death in 2008, his brain was sliced into 2,000 ultra-thin sections and digitized. Today, it is the most famous brain in medicine, a model for anatomy students. As for my brain, at best they'd play football with it and then throw it away. The realization of the value of memory often comes to those who have begun to lose it. Without it, it is impossible to live a full life. But excessive memory can also become a problem. An example is Solomon Shershevsky. He was a journalist with a phenomenal memory. He never wrote anything down, could reproduce huge tables of meaningless data, and even recite the Divine Comedy in Italian without knowing the language. His earliest memory was of his mother when he was 6 months old, even though his visual cortex hadn't yet formed. You might think, wow, I wish I could do that too. That way you could memorize all the weekend songs. But don't be so quick to wish for it. He had synesthesia, sound had color, color had taste, and taste had sound. And all of this happened simultaneously, but the abundance of information made it difficult for him to think in general terms. He couldn't recognize people because he noticed that their voices changed dozens of times a day. When stirring tea, he would wrap the spoon in a handkerchief because the sound triggered an avalanche of numbers and images. Sometimes noise would rob him of the taste of food, and a violin would make his meal taste salty. Most importantly, he couldn't forget. He tried various methods, but none were successful. One time I forgot to turn off the water in the bathroom and went out for a walk. As you can imagine, when I got home, my angry neighbor was already waiting for me. But I smoothed things over, said I would step out right away, and then, by chance, didn't go out at all. I didn't leave my apartment for 2 days, but not because I was afraid, rather because I was mopping everything up with a rag into that damn bucket. Alright, let's get back to Solomon. His brain wasn't studied after his death, but thanks to the psychologist Alexander Luria, we know that memory isn't a tape recorder, but a construction set. Each time we remember, the brain assembles the picture from fragments, rewriting the details, which is why memories get distorted. Neurosurgeon Wilder Penfield described a case. During brain surgery, the patient heard her mother calling her at a lumber warehouse. She had never been there, but just a couple of minutes earlier, the surgeon had mentioned wood. The brain simply connected the images, and that's how this scene was created. Think about how many myths, legends, and made-up stories were born before it was possible to verify facts. The brain doesn't like uncertainty and fills in the gaps with details that seem logical to it. But sometimes this leads to disaster. There was a case in the US involving Steve Titus. He was wrongly accused of rape. The victim confidently identified him. He spent 4 years in prison before the real criminal was found, Edward Lee King, a rapist of 55 women. Titus's life was ruined. He died of a heart attack at the age of 35. DNA tests later proved the innocence of hundreds of prisoners who had been convicted based on the same kind of false eyewitness memories. If we all make mistakes, none of us remembers a clear picture of what happened. Can this be controlled? Elizabeth Lopez built her career on implanting false memories in people, such as making them believe that as children they got sick from certain foods or that they loved broccoli. This actually influenced their habits. I would gladly make an appointment with her so she could implant in me the belief that I never smoked and never will. But unfortunately, I am 5,000 miles away from her. If memories can be changed, they can also be erased. All you need to do is find the neurons responsible for a specific event and break the connection between them. This has already been tested on mice. Scientists observed which neurons a mouse uses to remember a blue box. Then they moved it to a red box, triggered the memory of the blue box in its brain, and gave it a mild electric shock, scaring it. Then they put the mouse back in the blue box and it became frightened because it remembered the electric shock, which supposedly happened in the blue box but in reality had occurred in the red one. I've often thought it would be nice to erase all my embarrassing memories, but every event has influenced me and now I am who I am because of them. But if there were a safe way to partially wipe my memory, I would definitely erase memories of my ex and of course my experience watching Breaking Bad so I could watch it again. Thank you for watching. I'd appreciate your feedback. See you soon.